Because of 10. Hope everybody got my email.
Oh, 10? Oh,
Okay.
I didn't get an email that said 10. You better send me that.
Yesterday I sent it. 2 days ago.
I didn't see one that said 10.
Oh,
Unless I didn't read it.
Yeah, that's it. People
I'm
don't
going to
read.
be here from the rabbi school. That's all the rabbi school has to pay.
Sorry, yeah. Just we need more than 1 hour. And I got
Okay.
I got the sanctuary.
Yeah, radio sign on here.
11:30. No, I'll be out.
Incidentally, I've been practicing my song. It's got to be faster. I can't sing it, so
What song?
it has to be faster.
So,
I do Angel.
oh,
Okay, you can do it faster.
that's David Melech Israel.
Well, we could use him. He knows.
I get it wrong. I can't get David Melech Israel. I get that wrong here.
Rabbi's going to be God. And
No,
Abraham.
no, no. Rabbi Till's going to be God. I'm telling you, she's going to be God.
Oh, it's got to be female.
I could be that.
Female
She should be
got to
God.
be minor.
It's too stereotypical.
Well, maybe an angel.
Okay.
We don't know.
The God needs to be downstairs.
Well,
She doesn't mind hiding.
I guess the whole discussion now is does God have a gender?
That she should
We'll talk.
change.
Mother of everything that ever is.
We'll talk about it.
She changed.
I think
Okay, whatever you decide. I'll give you the script when you do whatever you do.
she should be God.
She's the director.
I know, but it's too stereotypical for this male rabbi to be God.
Oh, then Hagen should be a female also, and I can be Esther.
Okay.
It's-
I wanted to be Esther. It's a much better part.
There are about 2 or 3 costumes I never did. I never dressed in drag. I was never a priest or a nun. And what other costumes that I mean, like things that I just felt were just a little bit too
Cinderella.
much. I could have been Cinderella, but I didn't dress in drag, you know. It actually might have been a nice thing to dress in drag, but, you know, just, I don't know. Whatever. Some people, you know,
It's never too
there was
late.
one time I was a leprechaun, and we took a big, like, plastic water jug that looks also like the antifreeze fluid that you put in your washer, and I put food dye in it, right? So it looked like whatever. Well, a couple of parents came up to me and said, the kids will pick up the things and they'll drink it. So I can't do that, you know. You have to be very careful on a lot of levels.
Rabbi, if you want, you can do your picture. You can be in the dress. No?
Shabbat Shalom. It's so nice to be here. Because I could have been in Washington having breakfast with Jonah Pesner and 200 or 300 kids, teenagers. And so instead, I am here with my beloved congregants. Hi, Peggy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we turn to page 192 for Matovu.
Matovu,
Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Vani berov hazlecha, avo beitecha, eshtahaveh al gadshecha, beiratecha. Matovu, Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahavti me'al beitecha, u'mekol mishkan kevotecha,
Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, Elohim berov chasdecha, Aneni be'emet yishecha. Ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael,
Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
195 together, the middle of the page. Don't let me fall as a stone falls upon the hard ground, and don't let my hands become dry as the twigs of a tree. When the wind beats down the last leaves, and when the storm raises dust from the earth with anger and howling, don't let me fall. I have asked for so much, but as a blade of your grass in a distant wild field, let's drop a seed in the lap of the earth and dies away. Sow in me your living breath, and sow a seed in the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, rofecho basar, mafli la'asot.
Elohai, Elohai,
Neshama, shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, shenatata bi tehorai.
Taverata,
Sarta, atanefachta bi, ve'ata mishamra b'kirbi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorai. 198. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes and slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. We read together on the top of 204. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav la'asok b'divrei Torah. 206. What does this prayer mean? 206. Anybody? What? Well, you can read it. What? What does this prayer mean, or this passage? Elu Devarim, these are the things. Nobody? No thoughts? Janet?
Rules of living.
They're rules of living, yeah, part of it, sure.
What it means is
Herb?
that all of these things that you should be doing are encompassed in the Torah.
All of these things are,
That you should be doing are encompassed in the Torah.
all of these things that you should be doing are encompassed in the Torah.
And you should be studying, and if you study Torah, okay, then you'll know what to do. This is your guide.
Okay, so that's the summary line at the end in the English. Okay, the Hebrew may be a little different than that, but that's from the English. Good. Anybody else?
I think you have to do it without stopping. You constantly have to follow these rules.
You,
You don't just do it once, and then you're done.
okay, are they rules? I mean, yes, you constantly have to do it. You don't stop. You say they're rules.
Now, I'll come with suggestions of how to live a better life.
Suggestions of how to
I think if you
better
do
life.
these things,
Yes.
you will feel good and have a better life. I mean,
I think there's values. For me,
They're the obligations, what?
there's values.
Values.
Values of how to live our lives.
Right, how to live your lives, but there are also things, most things have limits. Most things have limits, and these don't have limits, and they continue, you can do as much. And it's why, you know, we'll worry about them in the world to come. We'll enjoy the fruits in this world, right? The reward of doing them will be the doing them themselves. And then the ideas of, you don't stop honoring your parents. Now that doesn't mean that they're always right or they're always good, but honoring your parents is a sign of respect, and really it's taking care of them in their old age or when they need your help. Deeds of compassion, you just don't stop. You always act that way. Study is a continuous thing all the time. Visiting the sick, be gracious with guests, rejoicing with the wedding couple, accompanying the dead, why we attend to the mourners, but really attend to the funeral itself, devoting in prayer and making peace. And all of them are limitless acts that you just don't stop. It doesn't say giving tzedakah. Notice, because there is a limit to tzedakah. You know what the limit is?
possibly do.
What?
Well, the limit would be is how much you're able to do.
How much you're able to do, but there's even another different limit on tzedakah. Well, tithing is the minimum, so that's the bottom limit. What's the top limit? Impoverishing yourself. Okay, so if you only had $2 and you gave $1 to somebody, you're not changing your own standard. However, if you're earning, $55,000 a year and you gave away $50,000, you are changing your needs and standard of living. So there is a limit. You're not supposed to get to that level. That way you'll need more yourself. If you only had $2, you're going to still need, but you still can give. So it's always giving, but it's also, there is a top limit to change. These are limitless acts.
But is this saying that these requirements, or because it says enjoys the fruits of the world? Or are they saying enjoy? Well, how do I...
Okay, they're not, it's sort of mitzvot.
Accompanying on a funeral, how do I enjoy that?
You're not supposed to enjoy it, but you don't get self-satisfaction out of being
Enjoys
it.
the fruit of the world.
Enjoying the fruit of the world. In other words, that's also the self-satisfaction you get for being there for somebody. In other words, you know you're doing something good.
Like you hesitate to go to Shiva. Every time you have to go to Shiva, you go, oh, they will never know that if I'm not there. And you force yourself to go maybe against your things to say, oh, I'll be lazy about it. But whenever I walk out of Shiva when I really wasn't intending intending to stay a long time, I always feel good that I went.
Right. Okay? So again, so there is an inner satisfaction of doing these things. The ultimate principle of that reward, forget about it. That'll come later on. Okay, so we don't have to read the prayer because we just discussed it. We will go on with
And then some.
Psalm 150. That was what you're planning? Okay. Why not?
Would you like?
That's very good. 218.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 begocho, hallelujah, birki auzo, hallelujah, bigburaka, hallelujah, kiravu. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel lechinor, hallelujah, betofu mahor, hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugam. Hallelujah, 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 b'mitzilzalei shama, hallelujah, b'tzilzalei truah, kol haneshama tehalleluya. Hallelujah, hallelujah. 223. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol batishbachot, El hahodaot, Adon haniflaot, Abocher b'shirei zimra, Melech elkei ha'olamim.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba.
Amen.
Ve'almadi v'rak yiruti ve'yamlit malchuti.
V'cha yechol u'yom echol, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Badala, badala, uvizman karib.
V'imeru.
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam u'lom me'omaya, yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yidrama v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha
Barechu.
ve'la min kol birchata v'shirata tushbehata
Ata benechemata, damiran be'alma.
v'imeru.
Amen. We rise as we turn to the call to worship, Baruch.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarei choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol Ameir la'aretz veladarim aleha barachamim uftuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit Ma rabu ma'asech Adonai v'lam b'chochma asita malach ha'aretz kinyanecha Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha v'al me'orei or she'asita yifa'arucha sela or chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu me'era li'oro Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMa'orot. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. on account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life. Be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah.
Erinu b'Toratecha, v'dabek beinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu, li'achava u'yira et shemecha, v'lo nebosh, v'lo nikalem, v'lo nikasher, le'olam va'ed, ki b'shem kodshecha, agadol v'nara b'hatachnu, nagila v'nismecha, nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha, v'havim yeinu l'shalom, me'arba ha'fod ha'aretz, v'tolichenu, kol memiyut le'atzeinu, ki el poer yeshuata, uvanu v'charta, v'keratanu, le'shimcha hagadol, selah be'emet emet, le'hodot lecha, u'leyachetcha b'yahava. Baruch Adonai, Aboher b'yamo Yisrael, b'yahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malkecha, Le'olam Va'ed. Et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam lebanecha, v'dibarta b'ham b'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'shachbecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha, leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. 239. Emet, there is no place where you are not. Even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, that pen strokes of lightning, white
fire like flame, stir the soul's passion, the sacred through every tumor.
Your truth for us is certain and established, now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Ay, 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 mi chamocha b'nei Madonna, mi chamocha neder b'kodesh, Nora tehilot, osus seferet, Nora tehilot, osus seferet, Shira Hadasha, Shirku Geulim, Shimcha Sefat, Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Odu ve'imlechu, ve'ameru, Baruch Adonai, God Yisrael. As we rise, we turn to Tefillah, page 242. Adonai zivat tiftachu fiya yetehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ahel Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Geulah Livnei Bneihem, L'man Shimo V'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham B'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Ne'elam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah, Rab LeHoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabbim, Somech Noflim B'Rofei Koholim, U'Matir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha bal geburot umido melach melech memid umechayem umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanat al hachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaKol. Lekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי ממרום, כך כתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, Adonenu ma'adir l'shimcha b'chol ha'aretz. Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, U'avinu Malkeinu, U'moshienu ve'hu yashmienu, Berachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yichtzion, Ledor vador, Hallelujah.
Ledor vador nagida lecha.
Ulenetzach netzachim l'shishatcha nartish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush, le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת
לדורותם ברית העולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית העולם.
בני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית העולם.
כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית העולם.
וביום השביעי שבת ונפש, שבת ונפש,
שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית העולם. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness, and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh ha-Shabbat. V'tzei Adonai Eloheinu ba'amcha Yisrael, v'tfilatam b'yahava tikabel, v'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha, el karov l'chol karav p'nei el avadecha v'chonenu, shefoch ruchacha aleinu v'techazena einenu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'rachamim. Baruch atah Adonai amachazir shchinato l'tzion. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness. You are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, ato shulcha, l'cha na'er l'hodot.
שים,
Sim, sim, shalom, sim, sim, sim shalom, sim, sim, sim shalom tova uveracha. Ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la la ya la la. Sim, sim, sim shalom, sim, sim, sim shalom, sim, sim, sim shalom tova uveracha. Pray silently.
עושה שלום
במרומו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. ויאמרו Our Torah study today is going to be led by somebody you know well. Yes, you do, because there are people maybe on streaming.
Do this. Correct? Huh? I need a bigger ear. Thank you. Hi, can you all hear me? Yeah? Good. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Oh, that's okay. I can just put it right here. It's fine. It's fine. Thank you for allowing me to do this morning. I want to begin by saying that I have reaped so many gifts in my studies the last couple of years. And one of the biggest gifts has been being aware of the relationship between prayer and study. I always investigated, I was always part of study, but not really part of prayer inside, spiritually. And now I pay attention to words of our prayers in ways that I have never done before, which many of you have probably been doing all your life. So there are two pieces that I picked up this morning that I just want to share before we dig in. Well, actually, we probably should dig in first and say, I understand that we say together the brachot for studying Torah, page 1602 for anyone who needs them in front of them. So perhaps we should begin by just doing that together. Baruch Adonai HaBarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bacha Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. I just want to say, this morning we studied a little bit about Elu Devarim. These are the things that we ought to be doing for all the benefits that they give to us. The Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, and the study of Torah surpasses them all, is adjacent to them all, whatever. I like Herb's understanding of it, that it encompasses, it gives life to everything that's listed on that page. And I think of the word, the nickname that we give, or the title we give to the Torah is Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. And it's just a great opportunity to slip in that on Monday we celebrate Tu B'Shvat. We celebrate, it is the birthday of the trees, the tree being the tree of life, the tree of life being the Torah. And we especially celebrate trees that give fruit. So I just want to give a plug to our Chef Ellen and sous chef Jackie, who have put together this amazing tree of life treat for all of us after tefillah, after services this morning. So please don't miss out on it. They're just amazing, and it will give you a taste of Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. So I just want to start there. And the other piece I want to mention this morning that is a great lead into hopefully what we'll read together in the Torah portion, B'Shalach this week. It's Shabbat Shirah, right? The Sabbath of song. Moses and Miriam's song at the good side, the end side of the Sea of Reeds. This morning we also read, and I've got it in front of me, you don't have to open it, on page 223, we read the bracha, the blessing at the end of Pesukei de Zimra, the end of the Psalms of praise that we read before the essence of the service begins. And in Hebrew, it's Baruch Atah Adonai, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El HaHodaot, Adon HaNiflaot, Habocher B'Shirei Zimra, Melech El Chei HaOlamim, and mostly praised are you, sovereign of wonders, crowned in adoration, delighting in song, Bocher B'Shirei Zimra. The God to whom we pray chooses in songs of songs, really. You could say songs of praise, but really the essence of songs is really the essence of our relationship between God and the Jewish people, all right? And to that end, although I thought we'd read a section this morning from Exodus 15, a little way into the Parsha, which it begins with the issue of, begins with the fleeing Exodus and Pharaoh's army following the people to the sea, wanting to get them back into captivity, and then crossing of the sea. You all know that's, that iconic story for all of us, and what happens at the other side of the sea, how the people are thankful and they sing to God. So I thought we'd look at that. There are so many gifts there. The first gift, and these gifts, by the way, all come from my beloved teacher, Rabbi Norman Cohen, my Midrash teacher. So I share them with you. He calls them Shabbat gifts, so I will too. We're on page 438 in the Torah, near the top. I thought we would read verses 2 through 21, and we would get a picture of Moses' song and then Miriam's song, and key in on a few wonderful segments of that. But before we do, to get into the mood of song, and I'm sorry I didn't talk to you about it in advance, but in verse 2, I'll just read the Hebrew for a moment before we read it in English. Azi v'zimrat ya vayihi li lishua, from Psalm 118, because many of the verses in this song come from the Psalms, which is one of the most popular lines that we sing in the morning as part of Hallel, and it's usually translated, at least here it's translated as, the eternal is my strength and my God is become my deliverance. But I want to suggest that it says, Azi v'zimrat ya, zimra, zemer. It's also in the prayer that I just read to you. It actually means song. So that God is not only my strength, but God is my song, or my relationship to God is one of song. It's a great opening for Moses' song of gratitude and praise to God, but it also says so much about what music does for us and what you bring to us in this space, this sacred space. Music lifts us to a place of our own spirituality that oftentimes we cannot get to with just words. So I just leave that. And I wonder if at least later we could sing it.
Yes, I heard that.
Woo! How wonderful. Okay, so now you know what the closing song is and what it means to us. So without further ado, I guess we usually ask for a volunteer to start reading Exodus verses 2 through 21. Please, go ahead.
Eternal is my strength and might. God is become my deliverance. This is my God, and I will enshrine God, God of my ancestors, and I will exalt God. Eternal, he warrior, eternal one is God's name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army is cast into the sea, and the pick of his officers are drowned in the sea of reeds. The deeps covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, eternal one, glorious in power. Your right hand, eternal one, shatters the foe. In your great triumph, you break your opponents. You send forth your fury. It consumes them like straw. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The flood stood straight like a wall. The deeps froze in the heart of the sea. The foe said, I will pursue. I will overtake. I will divide the spoil.
Please, thank you.
My desire shall have its fill of them. I will bear my sword. My hand shall subdue them. You made your wind blow, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the majestic waters. Who is like you, eternal one, among the celestials? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? You put out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your love you lead the people you redeemed. In your strength you guide them to your holy abode. The people hear, they tremble, and he grips the dwellers in Philistia. Now are the clans of Edom dismayed. The tribes of Moab, trembling, grips them. All the dwellers in Canaan are aghast. Terror and dread descend upon them. With the might of your arm, they are still as stone, till your people cross over, eternal one, till your people cross, whom you have ransomed.
Keep going. A little more.
You will bring them and plant them in your own mountain, the place you made to dwell in, eternal one, the sanctuary, eternal God, which your hands established. The eternal will reign forever and ever. For the horses of Pharaoh, with his chariots and riders, went into the sea, and the Eternal turned back on them the waters of the sea. But the Israelites marched on dry ground in the midst of the sea.
Okay, and just two more. We'll finish Miriam's song. Her 2 verses.
Okay.
Her 2. 20 and 21. On the next page. At the top. Then Miriam. Mm-hmm.
Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, picked up a hand drum, and all the women went out after her and danced and blew hand drums. And Miriam chanted for them, "Sing to the Eternal, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurled into the sea."
Thank you. Thank you so much. So just a quick note, as you see that it looks like a song. There's one of 4, really. I think it's 4 in the Bible. And I think in a traditional service, say Orthodox or conservative, people often stand for this, as they do for the 10 Commandments and other songs or things that look differently in the Torah scroll. And as we go and talk about this now, please know that it's a group conversation, all right? So just feel free to add anything. It's group wisdom here. What do you think? The frame around all of this is, I think we're focusing on both leadership styles here. What is a leader? And who are the followers? And the other piece is issues of theology. What do you understand as the theology in Moses' song in particular, because we'll deal with that first. Who is Moses' God? What is that God? What is that God like? So if anyone would like to comment on what we just read, how do you feel about the contents of this song? Knowing how, and first of all, what do you recognize in there? Besides the Ozi v'Zimrat Yah that we'll sing at the end, just a note. Where are we now? Verse 11 on page 440. Verse 11 in the Hebrew. Mi chamocha ba'ilim Adonai. Right? Right there. It's a glorious line. It's a glorious song. We sing it all the time in every service, right, when we do the Shema, right? But here it's planted in the middle of a whole bunch of other verses that talk about God how. What does this God do? What did this God do here? Please.
He's all powerful.
Powerful, right.
He's the one that basically forced the Egyptians to die in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
It was his doing.
And what exactly did God do?
He parted the seas.
He drowned them. Yeah, he drowned them.
And he's also, in fact, you're praising the fact that he did this.
Right.
Also.
Certainly the whole beginning is the thank you, the praise of God for surviving is thank you for drowning our enemy. Yeah? Please. Oh, I'm sorry, Yippee. Herb? Yeah?
I don't see this so much about drowning Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
And only Egyptians in that. This is the euphoria of being saved. And God is your hero. He's your Medal of Honor in this, okay? He saved you, and we're now on the other bank, and we're euphoric about this. A few minutes ago, we thought we were going to be killed, that they were going to run us over with their chariots. Now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes God, Huey Makina,
Mm-hmm.
and he saved us, and this is a joyous moment for us. We may feel bad for the fact that the Egyptians were killed in doing this, but that's overcome by the fact that we're happy about being saved and still being alive and our families being intact and God delivering us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very happy moment, even though the sadness is tinged with sadness over the fact that people have died for this to happen.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point about, right now it's about survival. This is a downtrodden, oppressed, still really not spiritually free people who are feeling in a vacuum. They really don't know where they're going. They don't know what's ahead of them. They only know what's behind them. And they have survived this, this attempt to kill them. So, very human. Alan?
Herb, the one thing that I noticed also is the number of times that God's actions are emphasized. The eternal, the warrior. God cast them into the sea. God drowned them in the sea of reeds. The deep covered them. They were down like stones. Your right hand is glorious in power. Your right hand shatters the foe. In great triumph, you break the opponents. So even though there's a lot of praise, there is a lot of saying, God, you really smashed him. God, you smashed him. God, you smashed him. Yes, there's the euphoria we have because we survived. But, you just said that once. God, you did it. Now we're saved.
Uh-huh. Interesting. To add to that point, the Midrash is very troubled by this. The rabbis are troubled by it. And in one very famous Midrash, the angels are surrounding God, and they're singing along with Moses and the people, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And in that moment, God says, "You should be crying. You shouldn't be singing. You should be crying because the Egyptians are my people too." So I'm not in any way taking the part of how we feel about it, but at a certain point in history, the rabbis were troubled. And I've learned that one needs to look at the context in which the rabbis understood the text. It's not always about the text, it's about when they lived and what was going on in their time. And in particular, there was a lot of Roman oppression in the times that the rabbis were attending to these texts and writing midrashim. So, yeah, Ellen.
I think they have to go back to God's doing this because the physical manifestation they saw of the rod going up is Moses, and they have to go back and tell the people it's God that did it. Moses lifted up the rod, but it was God's doing, not Moses' doing, and that is another, and that comes back again, I think in this portion when they need water and it hits the rock with the staff, but later on in the Torah, there's a different thing, and God gets upset that God wasn't giving due credit for the miracle that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really have to switch back to reinforce that.
Mm-hmm. So what you're actually reinforcing here, thank you, is this certainly the biblical theology that here the main point is for God to assert God's supreme power and to transform the Israelites who, after all, they lived 400 years in Egypt. There's no way that they didn't assimilate somehow and bow down to the Egyptian gods. And as purists as we might hear from the rabbis later on, that they were rewarded for their righteousness in Egypt, there's no way they didn't intermingle with the other people. And so God had a huge task of not just rescuing them physically from their bondage in the land of Egypt, but also transforming them and purifying their spirits from the idol worship of Egypt. So perhaps this also reflects that kind of power. Please.
And I think it's so now to remembering what we did at a Passover Seder, that it's not, yes, it was a miracle and incredible that we survived, but we have to remember what happened to the Egyptians and that it is not all good. It was a terrible thing that happened as well. And we have to remain human in our, we have to think of how to say it, how we, yes, we survived, but look what happened. And we remember this always, and we pass it on to our children.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep being kind and all the elements that we are trying to practice today. You can go back to when we were free as slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that died, the Egyptians died because of our trying to gain freedom. And we must not forget that people died.
There aren't wars.
Right. War always has its liabilities, for sure. On the other hand, what I think I heard you say, and it's certainly our mindset today, that's why I always say it's so important to find relevance and attach it to what our own aspirations are. Today, we look at the other person, the different person, who may even be oppositional, adversarial, and confrontational to who we are as people, and say, what can we do to bridge the difference? Let's not eliminate them, let's figure out kind of that restorative justice reconciliation perspective. We're so into it today that doesn't even appear here in the biblical context. Thank you. Did you want to say something? Anybody else? Yeah, please.
And going back to the miracles that God performed, God has to prove himself to the Israelites in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as he said, they were idol worshippers, no doubt. And he has to say, I'm worthy for you to think of me as your God. So that seems to be a piece of it. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the question is, how does God go about it, and how does he go about it using Moses as God's instrument in doing this? So I think you're right on the mark that way. My question is really, how is it being played out here? Please.
Well, the other part of it that I see is that God chose us as the chosen people. And with that responsibility, he has to maintain the chosen people. So the choices are a little less problematic. If he's chosen, he is in his position, he has to follow through. There's something in the middle here that we shouldn't ignore.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just about being delivered from Egypt and saved from the Egyptian army. Because they talk about getting even with the Philistines, with the Moabs, with the Canaanites. So this goes back a long time. I mean, they've been in slavery for hundreds of years, right? So they have these scores to settle from before they even went to Egypt. And now all of a sudden they have this weapon. You know, God's on their side, and we're going to go back and settle some scores. That's very interesting to be in the middle of this. I mean, you're supposed to be just euphoric about being saved, but this is, wow, we just won the Super Bowl in the last second, you know, with the last play, okay? We're happy about that, but we have this dynasty now, you know, going forward. So we're these powerful people now. The shoe's on the other foot now for us and everybody else.
Right.
That's very interesting as we go forward in the Torah.
So this was a great segue to what I'd hoped to even get to, this kind of almost vengeful God that we see at the very end of the song here. But your points are well taken, is God has a commitment to ensure that the Israelites, the Jewish people, survive. And some of the allusions at the end haven't even happened yet. And also the rabbis attribute some of these enemies of the Jewish people to later enemies, like Edom is Rome, if you will, in addition to Edom being Esau. So the past and the present and the future all in one song. And I'd like to suggest that the Hebrew gives a hint to that as well. In the very beginning, when Moses sings, Moses uses, well, there are a couple of things. In the first line, it says, Ashira Ladonai, I will sing to God. So there are a few things there that one might glean. He uses I will sing in the first person. So, you know, the rabbis ask, so did the people sing or did just Moses sing? And you all have pointed out that the people need to be convinced of God. So Moses really had to be the initiator. And there is a sense that they answered or they echoed back, because immediately after that it says Vayomru, and they said. So there really is, we could spend time on what that means. Echoed, answered, antiphonally with Moses. But the more important thing is the rabbis really they like to play with words a lot. And lashir is to sing. Lashur means the same consonants, different word, actually means to glimpse into the future. So there is the essence of understanding, as you pointed out, that this commitment is not just after the miracle of the sea. The commitment is a glimpse into the future. Moses is laying out the past, the present, and the future for the Jewish people. That what happens here is going to continually to happen, and we continually have to praise and thank God for all the survivals that we come through after each persecution, after each exile, after each crisis in the history of the Jewish people. So it's one way to understand it. Let's move a little forward, because I think, for me, this is the real gift. What do you see as the differences between Moses' song in verses 2 through 19 and Miriam's song in verses 20 and 21? What are the sames and what are the differences? Anyone want to point that? Anyone have any?
It acknowledges the women, and it has them dancing and being a part, truly being engaged in what is happening. Before this, it wasn't speaking of the women, it wasn't speaking of the physical as well as the spiritual. They're acknowledging, the women are acknowledging that the Eternal has hurled them into the sea, but it's a song of freedom, and but it becomes to me spiritual as well as physical.
Anybody, please.
Taking a simcha out of what happened.
Uh-huh.
They're joyful for where they've come to.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think it's up to God to just keep going forth. I mean, He's given them the tools.
Right.
They have to work together.
So I have a question, and if you want to say something else, it's fine too. But what is Miriam's song? What are the words of Miriam's song? Uh-huh. All right.
It's very hard because being slaves for 400 years, many of them had accepted the 10 gods that the Egyptians prayed to. So it's not so easy to give up these things, the sun god, all the different gods. And so it's really, people are taking a chance. People are not sure that, yes, they're following because they're given freedom, but I don't know whether they're really ready to accept one God. So she's trying to, Moses and Aaron, she's the sister, so they kind of talked to her and said, you've got to really work at this. You've got to make sure that the people begin to understand that it was the Eternal that saved them. It was God that saved them. And it was the one God that saved them.
So thank you. A couple of things. What you said just spurred on so many questions in my mind. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I think I understood you saying that the main gist of Miriam's song is thank God. Thank God for this. There is no theology that is laid out here as one might think in Moses' song. That the people need to key in on thankfulness. They need to key in on the one God, without qualifying what that God is at the moment. I just want to point out that both of these lines, in some places, also appear in Moses' song, especially the last one, horse and driver, God is hurled into the sea, right? Miriam echoes that. There are some traditions that say Miriam actually sang first. She had a long song, and for some reason, we could imagine why, was X'd out. But we don't know. This is all we have. So this is what we need to look at. It's almost as if she is echoing the last line of Moses' song when she says horse and driver. God has hurled into the sea. I just want to point that out. And 1 second, Ellen, before, I just want to plant a seed, and we'll talk about it in a minute. There are many elements of this that are fascinating. One is Miriam is called, first of all, Miriam's named for the first time. She's never named before this. She has a name now. And she's called a Neviah, a prophetess. Only a few women in the Bible, Deborah, Huldah, only a few are called a prophetess. Why is she called a prophetess? In tradition, just think about that. And even more importantly, think about this. In Hebrew, she's called Achot Aharon. She is the sister of Aaron here. Here is Moses' greatest moment, right? He's at the Sea of Reeds, singing to God for having saved the Jewish people, having brought the people out from bondage. Numero uno, alpha brother. There are 3 siblings, and here Miriam is associated not with Moses, but with Aaron. So just think about it. Ellen, I know you wanted to say something.
Only that, it's so conspicuous that she has such a short thing.
Yeah.
That maybe we mistakenly call it Miriam's song, and maybe it really isn't. Maybe it's just Miriam's invitation for the women to give the women permission and encourage them to also celebrate. And in my brain, it's they already knew plenty of songs, but that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it maybe wasn't necessary to put words into it, but then added on the physical part. But when it's sing to the eternal and it's ascribed to Miriam, this is an invitation of why you guys are just sitting there. Get up, rejoice. You're part of this also.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And the Hebrew attests to that because whereas Moses says, Ashira, let me sing, Miriam says, Shiru, which is the plural imperative, you sing, right? She's not saying I'm singing, she's saying you sing. I mean, there's certainly a lot we could say about her leadership versus Moses' leadership, even in the Hebrew, Ashira versus Shiru, but more like an invitation. So thank you. Yeah, please.
Maybe I missed something here, but Miriam's song is the beginning of Moses' song. Okay? She says, sing to the eternal, for he has triumphed gloriously. And Moses says, I will sing to the eternal, for he has triumphed gloriously.
I'm saying it's the same words, right? But it's not necessarily Miriam. Our tradition teaches that actually Miriam's song may have come first, and Moses copied Miriam. That's one of the traditions around.
Well, think of it, that she says sing, and Moses says, okay, I will sing.
Yeah.
So that's why you get that tradition.
The tradition, right.
But it seems to me that basically she's giving, if this is her whole song, this isn't a song of thanks. This is a song of talking about how God has triumphed, like a boxer has come out of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not thanking the boxer for winning,
Mm-hmm.
but he's shown something by the fact that he's won and he's become the new heavyweight champion,
Yeah.
which is very different than thank you for saving him.
So you're making a great point, and this goes back to, and thanks, Alan, for that. I also want to say theologically, you're bringing out another point in the text, at least the way I understand it, and that is, where it says, and Miriam chanted for them, it says in Hebrew, vata'an Miriam. It's not the verb to sing. It's not Miriam saying to them, it's vata'an. And ta'an means to answer, to respond, or to rebuke. That's what the word that means. And there are some people who understand it that, in fact, that Miriam is, now this doesn't go, it goes against the grain if this was Miriam's song before it was Moses' song, and I understand that, but there's also another understanding that Miriam actually was rebuking Moses for the content of his song, rebuking Moses for describing God to the people in the way that Moses described, saying, you know what? You're just saying, sing to the eternal, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver God has hurled into the sea. I'm pushing back on that. I don't believe this is the God I want to. This isn't the God that I want to worship. This isn't the God that I want with me as I go on this journey through the desert. So that's just another understanding. Theologically, she is presenting something else completely. And the further evidence to that is that that what she does do is she picks up her timbrel, and the women follow her. Right? They follow her. We don't have evidence of people voluntarily following after Moses. Right? We don't have, and they follow her. Quite a leader, because a leader is an effective leader when a leader has followers. And why do they follow with the hand drums? She actually has to say, Shiru, sing, but in fact, the hand drums may be a mode of celebration. There's a midrash that says, the question is, so where did these women get the hand drums? On their way out of Egypt, when they're quickly making matzah to get out, and they're quickly putting their essentials together in a bag, whatever those essentials are they going around picking up their hand drums? Yeah, did you want to say something? Somebody, so at least one midrashic answer to that is that, I agree that it's very feminist, but that the women were the righteous ones. They were the ones who continued to have babies, even when Pharaoh's decree said all male babies will be killed, because they understood if they didn't have babies, then even the girl babies wouldn't survive, and that would mean the future of the Jewish people. So, and that the women understood this, they continued to have babies, and so God actually rewarded them with the notion that they were the righteous ones. And they understood that God was going to redeem them from bondage, so they actually put into their suitcase that stayed underneath their beds, they put their hand drums in there so that they would be ready to celebrate God's victories and their redemption.
And I think that Mary should be honored, so, because without Mary, there wouldn't be a Moses. And but beyond that, you stated that Miriam was much closer to Aaron. Could you talk about that?
Okay, yeah. I just want to say something. For me, you just said the most quintessential lesson that I took personally from this chapter, and that is Miriam is the Goelet. Miriam is the Redeemer, because in truth, without her, there would be no continuation of the history of the Jewish people. Remember, in Exodus 2, she was the one who insisted on going by the water when Moses' mother put him as a baby into the basket, and to watch and make sure that Moses would be protected. And by the way, that the rabbis say that she is called a Nebiah because as a prophet who sees the future, that she, as a child, as a 5-year-old, dreamed that her mother would give birth to a baby who would redeem the people. I realize it's a little fabricated. Rabbis love to fabricate, but they do it to try to give meaning to the text when the text is ambiguous or not clear. So that's one way of looking to why we understand Miriam as a Nebiah. But in truth, she's a Nebiah because we expand I think, the definition of prophet by saying that she was a redeemer as well. So thank you for that. That was beautiful. Just a quick word. I know this is getting a little long, but a quick word about Miriam as the sister of Aaron and not Moses. You could probably answer that. We all could answer it.
You seem to answer the question when you said the Midrash that if you define it as rebuking Moses in her song, then you would say, you'd be more likely to say she's the sister of Aaron. If the two go together, very much so. Because if she's saying something now in the way she's like saying something bad about Moses, then she'd be more relatable to being Aaron's sister than Moses.
It's a good point. That she wants to be identified more with Aaron. And in fact, that plays itself out in Numbers 12 when Aaron and Miriam come to Moses and challenge Moses' leadership and saying, you know what, God talks to us too. We ought to have just as much status as you. I mean, that plays itself out in various ways in Numbers 12, which you might be interested in. But you're making a very good point. One way to look at it is that when Moses wasn't even born, And Miriam and Aaron were brother and sister, and they grew up together in Egypt. Remember, Moses didn't even grow up, he didn't grow up among Jews in Egypt. He was the other, he was the interloper. So in fact, the close relationship between Aaron and Miriam plays itself out here because they grew up together in the same house. Perhaps it's one way of looking at it.
She needs some vote too because Aaron is the high priest. You can't just make chopped liver out of Aaron. You have Moses'
Yeah. Good point. That's a good
And
point.
she has to have her
Yeah.
due also,
Mhm.
since we have a priest and we have a redeemer that talks face to face with God. Okay, so let's, plus the next chapter elevates her even more.
Yes, yes. So it just as a little teaser, thank you. You know, immediately when they almost have to be forced to leave the comfort of having water to drink, and they leave and go into the desert for the next umpteen years, they do come upon bitter waters, which eventually Moses changed into sweet waters with God's help. But I just want to leave you with Miriam. The name is associated with bitter waters. Mar is bitter and Yam is sea, bitter waters. And Miriam, maybe through her name, the embitterment of her life, not only becomes a redeemer, one of the three redeemers in Israel, but also is known throughout the saga of the journey in the desert, midrashically, as the one responsible for providing water to the people to nourish them, both physically and spiritually. So there's a whole chain of tradition about Miriam and the wells. As we know from Passover, many of you have a Miriam's cup at Passover. She is the one who waters our soul. You can tell my bias here. So I leave you, and thank you for all your comments, and Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you.
We turn to the Aleinu, page 586. Oh, thank you. לשבח לדון הכל, לתת גלולה יוצא בראשית, שלא עשה לפני ארצו, ולא שמנו כוחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגהור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים הארץ, ומושב יקרו. ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים, ואלוהינו אין עוד, מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורה. אתה היום ידעת, השבות לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ, מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר, וחיה אדוני, למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We now think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died this season and years past, those we have drawn into our hearts with our own. In Shabbat, we remember the yard sites, the anniversaries of the deaths of Dorothy Bassett, Ann Birnbaum, Harry Danoff, William Fawcett, Fred Feinstein, Eva Fry, Schubert Fry, Joseph Geiger, Leatrice Golden, Natalie Gordon, Peter Haydu, Edith Harris, Florence Herman, Samuel Hutkoff, Don Irwin, Harris Jacobson, Sadie Klein, Tatiana Krasnick, Dorothy Linsner, Morris Millette, Werner Marks, Kathleen Molzer, Shari Morris, David Newman, Benjamin Rudin, June Schechter, Peter David Schifrin, Myra Schoenfeld, Raymond Schwartz, Ida Shapiro, Sanford Shapiro, Lily Silver, Charlie Silver, Albert Simon, Charles Soloway, Arnold Weber, Mo Weisenberg, Randall Wood. Are there any other names anyone wants to share? Zichronam Livracha, may their memories will be for blessing. We turn to Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yemru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach li'olam l'almei olmaya, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudashah b'richu, le'ila min kol b'rachata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalma v'yamru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, v'ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yal kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimru amen. You may be seated. Just a few upcoming announcements and events. Just shorten them. Tomorrow morning, if you want, you can learn with the same teacher again. I recommend it highly. You'll learn about Martin Buber. Also, Purim choir practice is at 10 o'clock, not listed correctly here. And the Radio Sinai at 11:30, both those will be here. Quickly, next week, Shabbat services, there's Young Family Shmuzin, and then regular service at 8, featuring Music of Inclusion. Is that Music of Inclusion? Okay. And then Saturday the 15th, besides Torah study, Barit Festaya will become Bat Mitzvah, the daughter of Joan Festaya and Miriam Weber Festaya. There's also Purim choir practice. If you haven't voted yet in the Zionist elections, you should be embarrassed by now. Okay? Please vote. What?
There's celebrity chefs tomorrow.
Oh, sure, I forgot that. Yes, I wanted to mention that. So tomorrow at 2:30, there are celebrity chefs, Islamic cooking and cooking from the Islamic world, and that should be really nice, sponsored by the Women's Chabara.
Alan said for some people it's still
Some people maybe it's a two-step process. So if anybody needs help to do it, I helped people last week at lunch.
Okay, it's a two-step process?
It's a two-step process. You
Yes,
already
if you register twice.
You have to do it twice. First they give you a password.
Yes, and then you come back and get your password.
And then there's a second password. If you
Right.
haven't ever voted before, it's register and then get another password and vote a second time. A little confusing if you've never voted before.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen.
Glad to help.
Thank you very much. Yes?
I'd like to share that this is the month for disabilities and inclusion, and that all month long, but actually all year long, we're helping and people with disabilities, and we're trying to include people in all aspects of temple life, and so that will be coming through in all the services, and we already have glasses to help. We have hearing. We have the seats have been moved so that wheelchairs can be included. Rabbis in services are asking people to rise if they can. We're really trying as a temple to be very inclusive of all our time, and so I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you. Okay, Kiddush, and both you'll be inside Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. What page?
647. 647, as Jan pointed out, this is the poetry from Shirakia, sowing the seed. On the very bottom, the seed was Rakia.
Thank you, Jan, for this morning's lesson. And again, thank Ellen and Jackie for the wonderful, wonderful setup they have for today to celebrate Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's nasty out there, so it's
They have different ones, but it's not like there's any go left.
Thank you. I do feel what Twitter feels like to
We'll proclaim as the origins of that,
starting out.
of that tune.
So worried, oh.
And I want to, can I say just something?
This might be the same.
Thank you for, it was wonderful, number one. Thank you for wearing the earphones. And I
Oh,
could
yeah.
hear
Oh,
something.
aren't you all glad?
And what you did, and this is for other people to tell you, I can't hear when other people are talking because it's through you. But you
Beautiful, thank you.
Oh, I tried to summarize what I heard.
summarize, and I got everything. And you
That's a good reminder, thank
yeah,
you. So-
and that meant the world to me.
So
But
I say it so to make sure I'm understanding exactly what
Yes.
people are saying.
But for people like me,
Yes.
it's a gift.
So, such a good reminder to me, thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, all right, thank you. Thank you.
I'll let you talk.
No,
Hi, Sharon.
How
How are you doing?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah? Okay.